Okay, so here's how we'll do it. So to make a curriculum, how would we, what is a curriculum to start with? I think that's probably a better question.
Well, curriculum is a series of, it's a roadmap, basically.
Yeah, well, the roadmap of what you do and when you'll do it. So I think the starting point of this is to create a curriculum. It's the what, right? What is going to be taught? So what are we going to be teaching?
Well, if we're going to be doing football actions, it's going to be continuing to teach game moments.
Mm-hmm. So that's the starting point, right? So the game moment. In principle. Team tactical principles. Okay, cool. So with that being said, our game moments: attacking, defending, transitioning to defend, and I can't spell today. And then transitioning to okay, brilliant. Okay, so with this being said, game principles, what are they for attacking?
For attacking, building, creating.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm just going to bring this down. Building, creating, defending,
pressing, covering,
covering, transitioning to defend,
transitioning. Well, let's see. Is it? I can't quite remember.
It's okay. So we're either pressing or we're recovering, right? So
right.
we've lost the ball and we have organisation to go win the ball back, or we've just lost the ball, we're not organised and we're recovering to be able to stop the opponent playing forwards. That again, though, Bill, is my interpretation of how I would like to transition to defend. So transitioning to attack, what would it be?
Transitioning to attack is well, it's building and creating again.
Yeah. There's a nuance to it, though.
Nuance.
I've just realised a nuance with this as well.
Well, the objective transitioning to defend. Yeah, I keep mixing in team tactical principles.
So here's what. So I'd say with this, we're trying to exploit versus secure. Same with here as well. Because you look at the two clear moments. You've won it, you can exploit the opponent. You've lost it. Well, you're either trying to press to win the ball back or you're covering to become organised. So pressing and covering could be the same for transitioning to defend. So we're either covering to stop, to protect space, to stop the opponent trying to, to try and score, So really, you've just developed our evolution, Bill, of football knowledge, because now it's going to be pressing to win ball back versus protect space. Same for this here. What? Any thoughts on that, Bill?
Yeah, so thinking about transitioning to defend, I consider that press moment a moment to either exploit someone who is trying to build. In other words, the transition moment is I just had it, now you've got it. I've got to slow you down is really what the pressing is about. Pressing to kind of take advantage of perhaps the transition moment where things are dynamic, as opposed to defending where the attacking team has possession and has an attack, and you are trying to properly thwart that, turning it back, stepping through the moments, the principles of press to stop, press to turn back, etc.
I would look at it from the perspective of still ultimate goal. We've lost the ball. What would we like to do?
Yeah, certainly we want to win it back.
Win it back. And then you did bring up an interesting point there. So either pressing to win the ball back versus stopping the opponent exploiting us. So there could be, yeah. So we want to win the ball back, or we want to be organized to stop being exploited. Is there an easier way of saying that? Stop being exploited? Win ball back versus deny penetration. That's probably a better way of describing it, right? Deny penetration. And that way, there's a clear reference again. Win ball back, stop the opponent playing forwards. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so the only loophole I see on that, and I think back to some of the games that we had a couple threats where a defender or a goalkeeper simply made a mistake. And how does this apply when you've made a mistake, you've handed the ball to the opponent at the front line, and you've handed them a 1v1. So you're not pressing because you're behind.
That's interesting. Yeah, we've lost the ball, but still, what would the reaction be? It would be to go win the ball back or deny penetration, right?
Right.
So that's where like the action would be recovery. You know, that's interesting to me because I always said I would transition to defend, pressing and recovering, but it's not. It's still pressing and covering, but you are individually recovering to cover.
And so the defending is actually an organized perspective.
Yeah, so if you lost the ball, so we'll use your specific example. If you've lost the ball in front of your own goal, the action, so the actual decision making of the individual player would be recovering, but then the principle would be you would be covering, denying penetration. So pressing, you're either pressing to win the ball back versus deny penetration, which is, force the opponent backwards or wide. Covering would be covering the space or the spaces to win the ball back in a certain area of the field, or you're covering to stop the opponent trying to play through you. So that's behind the press, which is why if you've just lost the ball, you are trying to individually recover to cover that space so the opponent can't score.
It's interesting. Just thinking if you've got that weird scenario where all your defenders are pressing the field
Yeah.
and they've left an attacker who mistakenly receives the ball and they're one-on-one with the keeper, well, now you still have your game principles. The keeper needs to press that player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there you go. So the player is still, press. That's essentially what the goalkeeper is doing, right? It's pressing. So yeah, it fits back into the game principles. That's a very astute realization within that. That's why goalkeepers, they are not a goalkeeper; they're a field player, but they just have the ability to use their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, brilliant. So, on the team tactical principles that we would then use, we're not going to go into that because I want to get into the actual curriculum bit today. So, just as an example, this is how we would then I'll do this quickly. This is how we then build it into a curriculum. So I'm just going to get rid of this. We'll use these examples here. Okay. So let's say we train twice a week, right? Fair?
Mm-hmm.
On average?
Yeah.
We'll do a 6-week cycle. So with this here, when we start looking now at how to build a curriculum, the reason we would start within a 6-week cycle is that it gives us the ability to cover the beginning game moments and game principles with an initial phase. And also what it does, it allows us to develop football fitness over 6 weeks. So the reason that we want to develop over 6 weeks is we want to progressively get our players fitter to develop football actions. Now I'll get to that in a minute, but to start with, we're going to look at building the curriculum to be able to develop how we want to be able to develop our style of play. So what do we start with? Where do we start, and why do we start with it? Where do we want to start?
I would say probably building.
Okay.
In the attack.
Specific reason?
Kickoff.
Fair enough. Okay. Session 2, what would it be?
Possibly creating.
Okay, could be. Week 2, what would it be?
Week 2, we're transitioning to defend.
For session 2?
Pressing.
Week 3, what would it be?
Covering.
What did you say, sorry, Bill?
Covering.
Yeah, go on. You fill it in, mate. That'd be easy, and we can break it down.
Oh, this is just repeating, right? Oh, wait. Transition to attack, building, create. Oh, wait a second here. Should have been. Well, so let me just stop myself here because I remember In your curriculum, you always had in the second session the transition moments. I don't remember the cycling here, except it was progressive. So anyway, to keep going with what I was thinking through, so this should have been transition to defend. Oh wait, what did you have there? So wait a minute here. Transition to attack, creating. I've gotten a little bit too far here. Am I on the right track here?
So let's do this. I'm gonna, unfortunately, I'll delete all this. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So, end objective. When we're building a curriculum at the end of the 6 weeks, what would you hope the objective would be?
At the end of the 6 weeks, you've gone through all the moments.
Okay, good. Because you want to be able to make the player as well-rounded in these situations as possible. Okay. So to be able to do that and to cover it, we want to get all this in. No problem. Okay. Now, how do we do it in a logical order, which makes sense to, one, their development of what they're learning within the game, but two, as the specific ages that you're working with. So this is where we look at the individual factors. They are 10, 11, 12. Is that correct? No, that's way too young. Your kids are 11 and 12-year-old boys. Is that right?
Yeah.
11 and 12-year-old boys. Their ability to take on information, understand information, it can flow from one session to the next. I mean, they're not completely inept of taking in information, which is good. So if we start with building, with attacking, so this is the example. What would make sense to teach them from building to the next session?
Well, I was thinking, if you're building, you're building to create.
Yeah, you see, so I do agree with you with that. Okay, so creating could be one. It could be one way of doing it. But this week, then, you've only focused in one game moment, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. If you follow that cycle, we would go attacking, defending, transitioning. Attacking, defending, transitioning.
Okay.
So if you followed that cycle, you would then do pressing and covering for week 2, and then you would do transitioning for week 3. What are the positives of this and the negatives of this?
See. The positive of that, well, there's multiple, but 2 off the top of my head is you're covering more ground in the content. You're also creating training sessions that are not almost nearly identical. There's a little bit more diversity for the players in the content that they're receiving.
So that would be the quote unquote problems with block training, is that you're only working on one thing. But then the positives of block training is that you perhaps could be able to build off more layers of what you've been able to teach. However, though, would you say the players that you're working with are highly referenced with this or highly unreferenced with it?
They're pretty unreferenced.
Pretty unreferenced. Okay.
Yeah.
So the other example is this. So block training is one example. Another example, you can say whole, part, whole. That would be within the session. But block training will be week 1, week 2. Multiple game moments. MGM, that's your other cycle.
Okay.
So if you teach multiple game moments, what are the positives and what are the negatives of it?
The opposite of block training.
Yeah. So what would that be?
So you're covering more game moments. It's more diverse.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue with that for these boys is perhaps not having enough experience to properly build their soccer intelligence.
Okay. So here's where I'd say the positives are. So we'll go through block training first if we were to do it like this. Okay. Oh, wrong one. And then we'd go transitioning. Well, so here's the other one as well, the problem with block training. Would you do transitioning to defend and transitioning to attack? Or would you go with 1 week of transitioning to defend and 1 week with transitioning to attack?
I found it effective to alternate transitioning 1 week to the next.
So you go like this, a week of transitioning to defend?
Yeah, so yeah.
It's fine. And then what's the issue with it, Bill? The block training though?
They're from each week they're only getting the 1 game moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you have more time focusing on. You only spend a week on transitioning to defend, and transitioning to attack.
Right, it's another 4 weeks till they see building, attacking again.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just quickly fly through this with multiple game moments. So if you did building in week 1, a logical way of doing it would be then, wait, we've lost the ball, transition to defend, pressing would be the next one. The one after that would be, we'd start off with defending, pressing, won the ball back, to then building. The one after that, it would be then creating. You then go to, we've lost the ball, covering. One after that, we'd start off with covering. Won the ball back, creating. Then we'd come back to our cycle. Is that correct? Yeah, then we come back to our cycle, building, pressing, building.
Is part of this construct, so for instance, building, which I often consider tends to include, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as kind of the referential building moment or building location.
Yeah.
And so if you're losing the ball in that field and you have to transition, then you need to be pressing and not necessarily covering. Is that part of what's happening here as far as the choice of?
Exactly. So it already plays into what's the consequence of the game moment. So if you're building and then you've lost the ball, you're then pressing. If you're pressing to win the ball back, this isn't a great example. So it could be that you are then creating, exploiting to secure. So actually here you bring up a good point, right? It'll be better for covering if we put this here. Why is that? Press, win it back, and then you're creating, right?
Yeah, right. Your transition moment then leads to your game moment. Yeah.
And then covering, you want it back, build. Creating, what would be better here? So we've just lost it. What would our reaction we would hope to be? There you go, Bill. Developing our football knowledge over here, mate.
Okay.
So now you can look at it. The game moments are aligned within the curriculum that we're building. So if we're building and we lose it, we're then pressing. If we're pressing, we just want it, we want to create. If we're creating and we've just lost the ball, we're then pressing. If we're covering and we've just stopped the opponent playing through us, we're then building. If we're building and we've then just lost the ball, we're then covering. If we're pressing, then we just want it back. We could be building as well. So that would actually be switched around in here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. There's another layer to this. There is another layer to this. Okay. We're not going to get through all of it today, but it's a good start. There is the next layer, which is even more fun. Oops. Okay. Why do we only focus on one game moment in each session?
To layer in the knowledge, to layer in the connection between the information and the physical action.
Well, it would make sense with younger kids to only focus on one thing, right? But does that mean that we can't bring two elements into what we want to teach?
Oh, sure. Yes, of course.
Okay. So by our logical creation of multiple game moments instead of block training, we can have a principle and a sub-principle. See where I'm going with this? Okay. So I want you to fill these in, Bill. See if you can figure it out. If we are focusing multiple game moments, principle, sub-principle, how do you match the sub-principle to the principle?
I'm not sure I'm following.
So session one is a principle that we're focusing on.
Session one
Game,
is build.
game. I'll be specific. Game principle.
Game principle. Session one is building.
Yeah.
Week
So
one.
what would the game principle for session? What is the sub principle for session one? So if your main principle is build and you're focusing on, what would your sub principle be?
I'm not sure.
So if you were to coach the other team, let's say there's me and you there, and I'm focusing on building, I'm trying to build out the back, what would you be coaching the other team to do?
Oh, pressing.
Okay. So what's the sub principle?
Defending pressing.
Yep, perfect. Okay. Pressing, win ball back versus deny penetration. What's the sub principle?
If the principle is pressing to win the ball back, then you're trying to create the sub principle would be you're pressing as you're building.
So now we've won it back. What it would be, you're right, creating, right? Another lens or an angle you can take with this.
Is there another angle?
No, there's another lens or another angle you can take from this. So you could focus on pressing to win the ball back, and then the transition moment that would come after it, which would be transitioning to create. The other one here, building, you've just lost the ball, transitioning to defend, which would be then covering, right? So that would be how you could work in your sub principle within that session. Any questions on it, mate?
No. So you're so I've come across this where the boys realize that if it's a building session and we're overloading to emphasize the building moment, the boys are already recognizing that when they are not in the building side of the game, that they're pressing.
It's good. So with that being said, with this, because I've shared this with you. Okay. So this is your quote unquote homework task now. So this week, you are going to fill in your RISE MSI curriculum. You're going to do it for the next 6 weeks. So you're going to come up with a curriculum for the next 6 weeks that we are going to be able to use within our training sessions. And you're going to design the curriculum around one of these models. But you must tell me why we are going to design the model with the 3 different types that we have, what your specific reasons are, objective reasons, and you're going to design the curriculum based off that. Sound good?
Sure.
And then that way we can then look at it over 6 weeks and assess and analyze whether that is the best way for us to train them. And then if not, we'll come back and reflect. Is there a different way?
Okay. We got a little bit of time left. Talking through the comments about concerns for player burnout and kind of sustaining their level through winter into and through spring. What's your experience with? So I've never coached through this curriculum, so it's not really fair to pull back examples that I've gone through where we had players kind of get through the middle of the spring and start exhibiting kind of burnout
I think it's multifaceted because you've got to look at them with their school life as well. If they have a very hectic school life where they get up first thing in the morning and then they're going to bed late at night because they're training and they're out on the fields all the time, that's where the problems begin. But if you're training twice a week or even 3 times a week and you give them 2 full days off from the sport and they have 1 day they're only playing at the weekend, I think that's pretty sustainable. The problem is when you train every day and there's no time away from it. So the sustainability piece is really important. With that being said, how the training sessions and the structure in the week is designed, if you train 3 times a week, you should load your training accordingly to the players that you have and the current external factors that they're going through. So if you know, I'll use the fish as an example, that they go swimming or they do cross country, whatever it is, you got to recognize with those kids specifically how that they're going to be able to interact with your loading cycle that you have. And this is what today, like we needed to go over the curriculum piece because it then plays into how we design the loading. Once we understand the curriculum, how that's structured and that's set out, you can then talk about physical loading for the players, which is a whole separate conversation. But understanding the curriculum first, once you set out what you're going to teach, then you can look at how you overload the players to be able to teach it. So that's the thought and reason behind it. But in terms of training in the winter 2 times a week, it's no problem. They'll be fine. I can't foresee anyone burning out doing that. It's when they do it every day, you see problems.
And when do you begin? So that what we just laid down as the training session is pretty much identical to what we were doing in the fall. How do you build on that? Or I suppose these are the game moments. Perhaps that doesn't change. It's actually what you bring to the training session that's probably going to be different. Okay.
So that's where we start looking at how do you layer it. You layer what is being taught within the team tactical principles. So we're not just building though, right? How we build, as an example, would be how we then layer how we are going to build. So with ball, without ball, where we would like to build, what the idea is within the team tactical principle. That's where the layers come into it, and the development of that. Again, that comes from the layers of what you are going to be teaching within it. So there's not enough hours in the day to be able to go through it all, but it's like the building blocks of it. Once you understand the building blocks of game moment, game principle, then team tactical principle, it comes underneath it. Then teaching the individual, position, moment, direction, speed, that all comes a part of it. But understand this first is absolutely the priority.
And how I know that through the games that are played, you can work on individual skills, but there's still a deficit at all levels, really, even to my highest performers on the team, where they really could work on hundreds of touches on the ball. Is that something that you would incorporate into a training session, or is that something that you would want the kids to try and take on themselves?
With executing technique or just a basic action, because obviously executing technique, you're doing it against an opponent, but to develop a basic action like controlling the ball, I'd always encourage kids just to play by themselves at home and to find different ways of improving it. So it's like when I was a kid, you kick the ball against the garage door and it would come back at different angles. You just control it. So I would recommend stuff like that. In homework practices, passing and receiving against the ball on a wall, right? You can YouTube it, ball on a wall, and then like different ways to turn and different skills to use. That's another one. So yeah, I'd highly encourage going home and practicing that by themselves. I think that's important.
What would you call the success rate of something like that? I have encouraged that. I've never given them. I've really never given them examples of how to go find material and then just do it themselves. I've encouraged them to, put socks down instead of cones, and
yeah, I mean it's great. I mean, there's plenty of stuff on YouTube that you can go and find. I'd say that I think big one for us is like making our own videos to do that. That'd be really big for us to do it. But YouTube, you can like type in. I'll find it for you quickly, mate. Put it in here. Ball against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen plenty of things online. It's the connection between my desire to have. So, for instance, Henry has requested to take the winter off. It's fine,
Yeah.
right? But I would like to encourage him. I know that he likes to mess around in his own yard. He's constantly trying to nutmeg me whenever we're just kind of casually hanging about.
Yeah.
So he's curious about it. I just don't know if, it's with Jack's team, I would give blanket, why don't you go try these things at home? And when kids weren't doing them and they would come to me and say, hey, I'm not improving, I would say, it's a clear correlation to touches on the ball.
I mean, that's just like I've sent it there over YouTube there, just like as a quick example. But yeah, just like little homework drills to do with their brothers or sisters or their mates at home. Just anything to improve their ability to pass and receive. If it's that by themselves, there's no harm in doing it. Just we have to distinguish very carefully that won't improve their ability to pass and receive in the context of playing a game. It does help their basic action of being able to do it. But yeah, I'd strongly encourage that. I think it's important. But yeah, all right, Bill, I will leave you to it, good sir. I will see you a little later on this evening. I've got to jump on another meeting now at 3 o'clock.
And we're going to be joining the girls tonight?
Yeah, girls will be there tonight.
And we're at 9A?
9A, yeah, so 7:30 at 9A. So we
7:30 or 7 o'clock?
Oh, shit, sorry, 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
I had 30 on the brain with the first time. So 7 o'clock.
Okay.
9A.
See you tonight. I don't know how many boys are going to show up, but we'll see you.
See you then, mate. Thanks, Bill.
All right, bye.